Off the Rails is the 24th episode of the TV series and is based on the story of the same name from the Railway series book, Gordon the Big Engine. This episode once again has Gordon taking the spotlight up this time since the Troublesome Engine saga, and it's also the first time he has a proper accident in the TV series. Morning, Gordon is resting in a siding while noting to himself that being an important engine could sometimes be very tiring. Henry suddenly pulls up, rudely wakening Gordon with his whistle, and calling him Fat Face. Another use of the word fat besides the Fat Controller's name. Gordon is very cross, believing that an engine like him, who has never had an accident, should be treated with respect. Then Percy comes and asks Gordon if jammed whistles and burst safety valves count as accidents. Gordon denies it, saying that those things can happen to any engine, unlike Henry who came off the rails. It is Henry's day to take the express, and as he prepares to leave, Gordon warns him not to come off the rails, much to his annoyance. After Henry leaves in a huff, Gordon tries to go back to sleep, but is soon awakened by his driver who tells him that he is to pull a special train. Gordon becomes angry when he learns that it is trucks, as he would rather take coaches. Gordon's fire is unable to burn right away, so Edward pushes him to the turntable to be turned around. Gordon complains the whole way and Edward just tells him not to be silly. The movement had gotten Gordon's fire burning nicely and making steam. As the turntable rotates, Gordon is so cross that he is willing to do anything to get out of taking the special, regardless of the consequences. When the table is halfway round, he moves forward in an attempt to jam it and stop it turning, but is unable to stop and slides down the old rails into a marshy ditch. Gordon is horrified and shouts for someone to get him out, but his crew sternly refuse, telling him that he is stuck. In his office, the Fat Controller receives a phone call by Gordon's crew who tell him what has happened. Seeing Gordon from his office window, he orders to have Edward to take the special train instead and leave Gordon where he is for now. Meanwhile, some little boys come by, see Gordon's predicament and tease him with a rhyme, leaving him humiliated. Gordon stays in the ditch for hours, until late at night when the rescue team finally comes. After extensive work removing his tender and preparing a road of sleepers to keep his wheels off the mud, cables are hooked behind him and then he is pulled out by James and Henry. Afterwards, a filthy and disgraced Gordon crawls back to the shed, a much sadder and wiser engine for his experience. I got an interesting bit of trivia for you about this episode. Not just the episode in general, it's more about my experience with the episode. When I was young, it was an episode that I didn't really like to go near as much. And I can't quite figure out why it was. Maybe it was because of the accident that Gordon had coming off the rails. Maybe it was his reaction to falling in a ditch. I don't know. And then eventually I finally plucked up courage and watched the episode all the way through. And I loved every second of it. In fact, looking back at it again as an adult, I love it a lot more now than I did as a kid. It's sort of like when you watch some old movie or TV series when you're younger, where you watch it for the first time and you're too scared of it to go near it again, but then you finally pluck up the courage to watch it again and appreciate it more years later. It's kind of similar to my experience with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode Power Punks. The first time I watched that episode, the monster Terratoad used to scare the Thomas the Tank Engine loving piss out of me. I remember being so traumatised by that monster that I didn't go near the episode for years. In a way it's similar, but also very different. Whereas I knew what it was that caused me to be scared of the episode and not go near it for years, there are some things like Off the Rails that are just unexplainable. You're scared of it, but you can't really explain why. And as I said, I really don't remember what drove me away from this episode as a kid, but I'm really glad that I plucked up the courage all those years later to watch it again. Because it really is one of the best episodes in my opinion. It has Gordon having an accident for the very first time aside from a few mishaps that he'd had in previous episodes. And this is also the first time Sir Ringo Starr puts some tons of oomph into his voice when he voices Gordon. Especially in this bit when he talks to his driver about the special train he has to pull.
"Wake up, Gordon," said his driver. "A special train's coming and we're to pull it." "Is it coaches or trucks?" "Trucks," said his driver. "Trucks," said Gordon. Huh.
That reaction alone is just great. It's a hilarious and awesome reminder of how much Gordon hates to pull trucks. And I think the most oomph Ringo's given us in the first series is this line when Gordon lands in the ditch.
He moved slowly forward to jam the table, but he couldn't stop himself and slithered into a ditch. "Oh," she hissed, Get me out! Get me out!
That honestly just sounds like the kind of line you would hear in a big production movie or a TV series with a higher budget than this one. I'm not bashing the TV series' budget, by the way, I'm just saying that this is superb acting from Ringo Starr. He just puts so much oomph into that line that you really do believe that Gordon really wants to get out of the ditch and is terrified about it. It's also the first time we hear Ringo Starr sing a song in this episode, with the Gordon Fallen in the Ditch song by the Boys.
Silly old Gordon fell in a ditch, fell in a ditch, fell in a ditch. Silly old Gordon fell in a ditch, all on a Monday morning.
That little ditty has just become so iconic over the years that people still remember it to this very day. It was really nice that they had a lot of continuity in this episode with Gordon's previous mishaps. At the time he burst his safety valve after he went too fast pulling the express, and then the time where he's got his whistle jammed while he was pulling the express. It's just nice that they would go out of their way to remind us about these instances. I mean, I know this was originally done in the book, but it's just nice that they keep up this continuity and remind us of previous events. And that's why years later I love this episode to bits. It has Gordon's very first proper accident, and it's just a all-around great episode in my opinion. Check it out for yourself and see how Gordon gets his comeuppance after his boastfulness and hating to pull trucks. Again,